Is Mitch McConnell going to hold a vote today on what? Nobody knows. This is after, keep in mind, Obamacare took almost a year to negotiate. There were something like 100 public hearings. There were 44 Republican amendments that were accepted that became part of Obamacare because Republicans participated in the debate. This Republican legislation to strip Americans of their health care, to destroy Medicaid, to cause 64-year-olds making $20,000 a year to have to start paying $11,500 a year for their health insurance. I mean, there has not been a single Democrat who has even been consulted. This was put together by a small group of white male Republican senators, and nobody's, it's like there was no input. So, will there be a vote today on whether to proceed? Who knows? Okay, so there's that. Number two, Donald Trump is now calling Jeff Sessions weak. I'm guessing tomorrow the word will be pathetic. He's pushing Sessions to please resign, presumably because Trump doesn't have the wherewithal himself to fire people. He can do it on television, but in real life, who knows? But the operating theory right now is that he really wants to get rid of Bob Mueller and this whole Russia investigation, and the way to do that is to have an attorney general who can fire him, because Sessions has recused himself, so he can't fire Mueller. And Rod Rosenstein, who's the number 2 guy in the Justice Department, is not going to fire Mueller because he's the guy who hired him. So Trump's really, his strategy here has a couple of pieces to it. Number one, get Sessions to resign or fire him. Number two, hope and pray, and this is where Mitch McConnell could blow the whole thing up. Hope and pray that Mitch McConnell's actually going to adjourn the Senate, recess the Senate for the summer vacation, for the August vacation that's coming up next week, where, like good working people, these Republicans take an entire month off, right? And so if McConnell actually calls a recess, and this is where we're going to know, by the way, you are going to know the day after the Senate adjourns, or maybe the evening that the Senate adjourns, you're going to know whether Mitch McConnell is looking to protect Donald Trump or looking to destroy Donald Trump. Because if Mitch McConnell adjourns the Senate, then Trump can fire Jeff Sessions. 5 minutes later, he can make a recess appointment of Chris Christie or Rudy Giuliani or any, one of his other, mobbed up cronies. And that person then becomes the attorney general, and that person then can fire Mueller. Because with a recess appointment, recess appointment is good until the beginning of the next congressional session, which would be January of 2019. So he's going to get a year and a half out of whoever he puts into place if Mitch McConnell throws the Senate into recess. Now, throughout the 8 years of the the Obama administration, or at least the last 7 years of it, I'm pretty sure it was all 8 years, McConnell refused to ever put the Senate into recess because he was afraid that because they were blocking hundreds of Obama appointees, particularly judicial appointees, the most famous, of course, being Merrick Garland, that he did not want Obama to be able to do a recess appointment on any of these things. And so he blocked him by every single day, some senator who was staying in Washington, D.C. would come in, gavel the session, gavel the Senate into session, and then gavel it back out 5 seconds later. But they never declared a recess. So if McConnell declares a recess, that means he's down with Trump's plan to get rid of Mueller. And if he doesn't declare a recess, he's sabotaging Trump. So this is going to be an interesting one to keep track of. In the meantime, so that's the Senate. In the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan's apparently throwing his weight behind Trump. Here's what Paul Ryan had to say in a press conference last night.
The president appears to be laying the groundwork to fire his attorney general and then make a recess appointment of someone who could fire the special counsel. Does that concern you? Is there anything you can do to stop it?
Does that concern you?
The president gets to decide what his personnel is. You all know that. That's his. He's the executive branch for the legislative branch. He determines who is hired and fired in the executive branch. That's his prerogative. If he has concerns or questions or problems with the attorney general, I'm sure he'll bring him up with him himself.
So would that be obstruction of justice if he was firing him because he recused himself from the Russia investigation?
It's up to the president to decide what his personnel decisions is and any possible fallout that comes from that.
Yep, it's up to the president to decide what any of his personnel decisions is. Right. So there's that. You know, keep an eye on that. I mean, this is like, you know, kind of the inside of the political maelstrom. And in the midst of this, I wanted to give you a step into the Wayback Machine. This courtesy of David Beard over on Twitter, who tweeted out this clip from December 9, 1978. Now, talk about the Wayback Machine, 1978. That was what, 39 years ago? If I'm doing my math in my head right? This is Senator Ted Kennedy in 1978. This is the, you know, in the middle of the Carter administration. On the floor of the Senate, telling the story of his life, the stories of Teddy Kennedy's life with his father and his son. His father had a stroke, his son had cancer, and how because he came from a family of multimillionaires, they could deal with it, but the average American can't. And this is an absolutely brilliant minute and 29 seconds. Here's Ted Kennedy. Check this out.
I had a father that was touched by stroke and sick for 7 years. We were able to get the very best in terms of health care because we were able to afford it. It would have bankrupted any average family in this nation, any average family that is represented in this hall this afternoon, and the millions of people that you represent all over this nation of ours. I had a son that was touched by cancer. Extraordinary health bills that we were able to afford, and we received the very best. It would have obliterated and wiped out the savings of any family, mortgaged their savings, and mortgaged the education of their children into the future. 7 months in the hospital I was with a broken back and received the very best of health care. I've been able to receive it for myself and for my family. Just like all of us who are on the tip of the iceberg, way up high in the health care services. We've got the very best, all of us at the tip of the iceberg. But I want every delegate at this convention to understand that as long as I'm a vote, and as long as I have a voice in the United States Senate, it's going to be for that Democratic platform plank that provides decent quality health care, north and south, east and west, for all Americans as a matter of right and not of fortune.
Provides health care to all Americans, east and west, coast to coast. And, of course, it was Teddy Kennedy who just 6 years before this was in 1978, just 6 years before this, when Richard Nixon rolled out what we today call Obamacare. And, yes, he did. I mean, you can go back and watch Daniel Schorr on CBS. You can easily find it on YouTube. Daniel Schorr on CBS, along with Walter Cronkite, doing a breakdown of all the pieces of Nixon care, 1972, maybe 73. And Nixon rolled out what today we refer to as Obamacare. In 2000, Mitt Romney put it into place. He called it Romneycare. This is the Republican health care plan, and that's not a knock on Obama. I mean, it was the best he could do. It was the most he could get through Congress. But it was the Republican plan, and that's why the Republicans have nothing right now. That's why Mitch McConnell is not even telling them what the hell they're going to vote on today, because their plan, the Republican plan, was put into law by President Obama. I mean, talk about an irony, right? Because the Democratic plan has been well known. Harry Truman, tried to introduce it in 1947. It's called single-payer health care. Canada adopted it a decade later, or a decade and a half later, and it's now, all across Canada. Mexico has it. Costa Rica has it. All of Europe has. Single-payer health care is very straightforward stuff. It's Medicare for everybody.